Hi, Tim. Welcome to the show. Nice to have you again.
Hi, Peter. Great being here again.
How are you today?
Excellent, excellent.
Good to have you. How's the weather like over there where you're based? I think you're in
Finally,
Brussels.
so I'm based in Belgium, and it's really cold and cloudy. So you really feel that the winter is there.
Yeah, it's also cloudy as well here in Munich, Germany. Uh, like these days, the last few days, I wake up quite late, and then it feels like 6:30, but then it's like 9 a.m. Yeah, it's quite. I mean, not the best weather if you like sunny, bright weather. So we could do with something better. Cool. So Tim, nice to have you. So Tim is a web performance expert from Akamai. Or I think your profile says web performance architect, but I see you're involved a lot in the web performance community with talks and all, and you also have like your own websites where you do a lot of experiment with some of the APIs and some recommendations for what to build. So it's nice to have you again after we talked about 103 early hints, which got me. I spent some time trying it out with a small website to just experiment with also the speculation rules a bit, which we're going to talk more about today. So uh, to start with, I don't know how if you want to go through a presentation, but how would you like to? Do you have any presentations you want to do, or are you okay with me just asking questions?
I have some. I have prepared some visuals
Okay.
based on the typical questions I get around speculation rules, but I don't have like a canned presentation. So I would say
Okay.
just ask, and if needed, I will share a nice visual to accompany what I said.
Okay. That's awesome. So I think for me, the first question would be around how we got here. So I think speculation rules and some of the things it provides allows you to do like prefetching and pre-rendering. And I've read some docs where I think the the link preload or some pre-render APIs are no longer recommended in favor of the speculation rule. So do you mind talking a bit about what we tried in the past and where it's going with the speculation rules?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, in my view, when we talk about the past, that sometimes confuses people more. So I think it's easier to now just explain what you can do with the speculation rules, and then after that, share a bit, let's say, what the differences are with the past. Um, if that makes sense for you.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Then maybe just letting us know what the speculation rules sounds something too browser specific, but I don't know, maybe it's just the naming.
Yeah. So speculation rules right now is only available in Chromium-based browsers, but it's like, I don't know if it's like officially a standard, but the idea, it's not designed just for Chrome. So it's, let's say, a new API and a new standard, which will hopefully also be implemented in other browsers. So that's first thing. Second thing is, this API is only applicable to multi-page applications. So regular websites, not single page applications. That's also critical to know. And in the end, what is speculation rules? It's all about speeding up things. And it's all about speeding up the next navigation. Right now, how does the web work? Is you look at a page and then you hover around, you scroll, and then you hover over a link, then your mouse goes down, and it's only when the mouse goes up, or when you're on a mobile device, when your finger goes up, that you fire the actual navigation. And so that only then the HTML will be requested. Only then, when the HTML returns the CSS, the JavaScript, and the images of the second page or the third page you look at will be requested. And speculation rules is all about, why should we actually wait till the user completely clicked? Can't we do can't we speculate already a little bit and start some of these actions a little bit up front? For example, if your mouse goes down, in theory, you could already grab the HTML. And then by the time the mouse goes up, ideally you already have the HTML. Or if you want to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe if a person hovers over a link and not like very quickly, but because he's scrolling down, but he hovers and he stays a little bit longer, at that point in time, the chance, you're not sure, but the chance that a user will actually click on that link increases. So that's basically all what speculation rules is about. What, based on the user interactions, what can we tell the browser to already start certain actions upfront? And the idea is then when the user actually clicks, in an ideal situation, the page is there instantly. So that's speculation. Let me actually share my screen, but you maybe already have a question.
Yeah, one question I thought of was more like you explained. One use case might be when the user goes like mouse down, and you can already have the HTML. And I was curious if that actually works that well in practice, because maybe it takes a few nanoseconds or way less than microseconds than it would take for you to load to fetch the HTML. Then at that point, it doesn't feel like that different than when the user does it on mouse overs.
Yeah. So great question. Here you actually see a potential and the potential impact of the speculation rules. Here you see a large, this is on my own website. Here you see largest contentful paint of 80 milliseconds. I've seen in practice, and afterwards I can even show a demo. The best result I've seen so far was 25 milliseconds LCP for a second, third, fourth, or fifth page view. So that feels like instant. And how can you do that? You can basically, the only thing you need to do, and that's the beauty, you don't need JavaScript, you don't need special things, you don't need crazy experience. It's actually super, super easy to implement. So the only thing you need to add on your page is a little JSON snippet, script type speculation rules. And here you have some rules. And there are two things you can do. You can either pre-render or prefetch. Prefetch tells the browser you can already request the HTML, but only request the HTML, download the HTML, don't do anything else with it. Don't parse it, don't look at it, don't request any resources. Just put basically the HTML in the prefetch cache. That's option one. Pre-render goes a step further, and then you tell the browser, you instruct the browser, you know what, I'm pretty sure, or I'm actually really keen on performance, not only grab the HTML, but also parse it. Already request certain images. Maybe already execute the layout and the rendering process. And in the ideal situation, when the user then actually clicks, the page is basically completely ready and visible. So those are the two actions: prefetch or pre-render. Next is you should be able to tell the browser, it's a very powerful API, you should be able to tell the browser what do you want to pre-render or prefetch. And there you have three options. You can either specify specific URLs, or you can specify certain patterns based on regex, like all my product detail pages, I know they have, let's say, /p/, you could do that. But you can also just use a CSS selector. Like this would pre-render all links inside the navigation bar and all links marked as with the class article, for example. And last but not least, when should you do that? And that's identified by the eagerness. And you have multiple eagerness levels. And the short version is, and there are many nuances, and Barry Pollard of Google wrote that. They're like, it's a very, very nice blog post linked to that. But the short version is conservative. The browser will implement the action for the targets you specified the moment the mouse goes down.
Okay.
That's conservative. Moderate means when the user hovers over a link for more than 200 milliseconds. At that point in time, the action will also be triggered. And eager is basically your browser try to do this as soon as possible without potentially any user interactions. So that's basically the basics. So very simple JSON, prefetch, pre-render. You specify the targets and you define when or what to do that. And I will afterwards I can share some more advanced examples if you want. Does that make sense, Peter?
Yeah, makes sense. So I'm curious about the eager option, how it actually determines when to like what heuristic, or it just does it immediately after the page is fully loaded.
Yeah, I've not played. I have not played around that much with eager, um, because in the end, from a performance perspective, eager is better than moderate, and from a performance perspective, moderate is better than conservative. Now the issue, everything is a trade. Actually, do I have a slide for that? Yeah, I think I have a slide for that. If you're looking at, in the end, you need to think about what is the reward I get by doing it and what is the risk in case you have it wrong, if you speculate it wrong. For example, with conservative, the risk is very low because the user will likely, if the mouse goes down, the chance that they actually click is maybe like 99.5% or even higher. But your rewards, you can't, if you do that 150 milliseconds, if you win 150 milliseconds, you can't improve the performance with more than 150 milliseconds. Moderate is gives you more better rewards, gives you more lead time, but there is a bigger chance, it's perfectly possible that a user scrolls down, happens to hover over, let's say, a thumbnail, which is a little bit larger, and then there is the risk that you trigger that action, pre-render or prefetch, without the user actually clicking on it. And then you generate, you requested items from the CDN, you requested items maybe to the origin, your browser had to do some more work while nobody actually looked at it. And then eager, while it promises the highest rewards, the chance that you actually are right is not that big. Maybe on certain pages, yes. If you're like in a wizard and you're on page 1, and then you go to the second step and to the third step and the fourth step, then you could load eagerly
The next
say
step.
the next step, and that makes sense. However, if you're looking, for example, at a newspaper or an e-commerce website with maybe 50, 60, 100 links on the page, all screaming at you to click, which one of those should you eagerly hint? Maybe not. And what you should also know, you can't just eagerly pre-render all links on a page. The browser will, and there are limitations, and I don't know the limitations by heart, but I think it's up to 10. I could be wrong here, but basically there is a limit, and the browser will say, "Hey, although you tell me to pre-render 100 links, the browser will at some point in time just ignore you and have a limitation." So in my view, the most benefits I think are with conservative and moderate. I've not seen eager that much in the wild because of the high risk doing it wrong.
Oh, yeah. So I think that really explains it. Also, I think the example with the if you have a multi-step form, then eagerly loading the next page is most likely a good pattern here because you would likely get to the next step.
Yeah. Now, what is nice is that you can actually also, it's a very powerful API. So before it was like most of the examples, you just say, hey, there is one action and um, um, one force. Here you can, for example, also spread your risk. For example, if you're on the homepage you have many, many links. And you basically say for all the links on the page, you do it with eagerness moderate. That's when users hover over a certain link. But maybe you have like a very, very big carousel and a very, very nice image in the on the homepage, which you say, you know what, we know from experience based on real user data, based on analytics, that many people click the first link in the carousel. So with these settings, you can say, you know what, I want to eagerly pre-render any link which is the first child, so these standard CSS selectors in my carousel, and all the rest I do moderately. So that's, for example, one way to spread your risk. And another thing you can do, and this is what I call progressive speculation, is nobody obliges you to either prefetch or pre-render. You could, and this is actually what I do on my website. I prefetch, so just the HTML, which is like a less intrusive action in case you get it wrong. In that case, you just got the HTML. You didn't download all the images and do the rendering process. So I prefetch on hover. So when the user hovers, I try to grab the HTML already. By the time the user then their mouse goes down, ideally I already have the HTML, and then I trigger the second step in the progressive speculation. I would then say, now you can already, I'm pretty sure that the user will actually navigate to this page. So now please start pre-rendering. But because we already have the HTML from the hover, this pre-rendering step can basically almost instantly start. So that's I think really the beauty of this API. It's not just this simple thing. You can really think about how your website and your application works and implement that.
Yeah, I think the example you showed, you just moved over, was very interesting. I never knew that you could do both, like for the same selector, have a prefetch and a pre-render, which, like you said, makes perfect sense. And you already have it with the prefetch cache, and then on button down, you can already pre-render.
Yeah.
I think that's I may have to try that. I never knew that would be possible. And what I think you showed this earlier, but I forgot what the source document means here.
Source doc. Yes, yeah, that's a great question. So you can you have either document or a specific. So document works for CSS selectors and regex. That basically means that you need to parse the document to inspect the links. There is another one where you then specify URLs, and then you hard code specific URLs. Rather
Okay.
than just, but then you need to specify them individually.
Oh, I see.
So in my view, the most powerful one is the basically source document with either the regex selector or the CSS selector.
Yeah. Oh, cool. That. Thanks for explaining.
Yeah, you're welcome. Um,
You were going to say something?
yeah, I wanted to say what might be interesting for the listeners to see is the potential difference in performance you might get between, for example, moderate and conservative. But if you're looking at here, I will actually straight away also go to this graph. So this is data based on my own website. So more than 6 million page views a month. And what I did, I tracked the activation start time. So activation start is the time between the browser triggering the pre-render, for example, a little bit earlier on, and then the actual navigation. For example, if I hover the activate, it triggers. If I then wait 2 seconds before clicking, and then I click, basically your head start was 2 seconds. If it's on mouse down and mouse up, the time window you basically win is that activation start time. And this is for 1 month worth of data on my own website. And the good thing is I don't think it's linked to if your website is fast or slow. This also does not tell you how much performance you get, but how much performance you might get. And on my website, for example, with eagerness conservative, so that's what is the time you win by triggering the action a little bit sooner, so on mouse down. So 32% of my users, it's less than 100 milliseconds. and you can validate that if you're, let's say, an IT user and you're used to working with computers, then you typically click very fast, and 32% of the users is 100 milliseconds.
Yeah.
More than half of your users is somewhere between 100 and 200 milliseconds. And in 10% of the cases, it was, or a little bit more than 10% of the cases, it was more than 200 milliseconds. Now, this means that the maximum gain you can get from eagerness conservative is, for 32% of your users, 100 milliseconds, because you can't win more time than you start certain things sooner. When you switch to eagerness moderate, so that's the hover 200 milliseconds, you see that for more than 50% of the users, it's more, you potentially gain more than 400
100.
milliseconds, which is a lot higher. For a quarter of it, it's like between 200 and 400 milliseconds. And the reason it's only 8 milliseconds, 8% for between 100 and 200 milliseconds, that is very simple, because of mobile devices. Because on a mobile device, there is no hover.
Yeah.
So if you put eagerness moderate on a desktop, you're likely getting these values. The browser on a mobile device, when you put eagerness equals moderate, there are no hover signals, so that will only be triggered on tap down, and then you're in these regions as well. So eagerness moderate helps a lot on desktop, does not help more than conservative on mobile devices.
Yeah. I think that's. I was going to ask, which you already answered, how on the mobile devices it handles the moderate, because there's no hover.
Yeah. And I think this is crucial, because there are some blog posts and tweets around on the web where they say, hey, we enabled eagerness conservative and prefetch. So you're just grabbing the HTML at the lowest potential gains, and you're getting the smallest head start with eagerness conservative. And they're saying, oh, we have more than 500 milliseconds or more than 1 second of gains with that. In my view, that's basically impossible, because unless the user goes with their mouse down and waits, you can't win more. On top of that, you can, with prefetch, you can also, the maximum gains you get is downloading the HTML. So even if you would download, if you have 400 milliseconds head start for downloading the HTML, but your HTML is fast because it comes from the CDN cache, and it takes only 50 milliseconds to download, then your performance improvements will be maximum 50 milliseconds. You started 400 milliseconds earlier, but
Yeah.
what you do only takes 50 milliseconds. So the maximum gain you can get is the minimum time of your head start and the minimum time of the action you can do. And I think I have this, and this is for my website. When I switched in I initially was on conservative, and so here you see potential gains of 70 to 150 milliseconds. If I switch to moderate, so that's on hover, the potential gains drastically improve, which is great. However, if you're looking at then my LCP, so here you see gains of 110 to 1000 milliseconds. That's like crazy high. If here you see the actual LCP improvements, still a lot better. But why wasn't this more aggressive? Well, if my LCP was, let's say, 400 milliseconds and I started 2 seconds sooner, the maximum gain you can get is 400 milliseconds. You can't have negative LCP. So so that's also important to know.
Yeah. Probably the example or the blog post you mentioned, maybe they have bad data from their metric system or analytics.
Yeah, I think a common mistake in the performance world is when you when you look at data, is A mistake. I don't know if they did that, but let's say a typical mistake you could do is you, for example, I have here. Do I have it here? For example, I can capture in impulse. Is it pre-rendered? Yes or no. So that that's I can capture that. Now, what would be a bad thing to do is compare the performance of pre-rendered equals true with pre-rendered equals false. Why would that be? Well, that's a natural thing. Why would that be a mistake? The reason is simple. Your first page view is never pre-rendered, because
Yeah,
you can only start pre-rendering when you visited your first page. So it's only the second, third, and fourth page view which show you performance gains. Now, which page view is typically the slowest? It's the first
the
page in the
first page.
session, because then your browser cache is empty. You don't have the fonts yet. You don't have the CSS yet. You don't have the JavaScript yet. You had to set up a connection. You might have had redirects. So a false thing would be, hey, let's just compare. If I would just compare false with true, of course, true would be faster. Why? Because true is only the second, third, fourth page view, which were by design already faster, and the non-pre-rendered contains the much slower first page views as well. So if you do that, you need to compare. You need to remove the landing pages, so the slow landing pages, and just compare pre-rendered true versus pre-rendered false for page view 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. in a session. If you don't do that, yeah, then you get crazy numbers for prefetch and pre-rendering, which in my view are not realistic. That said, prefetching and pre-rendering is a great API.
Are the analytics tool today? Is it easier to be able to do that? Make this distinction within the data?
I can only speak for Impulse, but I'm pretty sure that the other RUM vendors can also
Okay.
zoom in on landing page equals true or false. I'm pretty sure that's true. That's not, I would say, nothing special.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, but it's key to remember to analyze, to zoom in on the right things.
Yeah. A question popped in my head when you were explaining and mentioned CSS and JavaScript. So we've talked a lot about, like pre-rendering the document, the page, and I'm curious. I'm sure the speculation works with CSS and other media types, probably prefetch, but how is it also, should I say, advisable or best practice to use this heavily on like JavaScript and CSS?
Okay,
And is that restricted to prefetch or both prefetch and pre-render?
it's a great question, and it's a common confusion because there's so many different words for prefetch and so many different words for pre-render. What you should really know is that the speculation rules is only helps for next navigations. So when you go from page A to page B, speculation rules is not designed to prefetch a CSS file, is not designed to prefetch a JavaScript file. Why? It would never, it basically would never, it would never work. And you have the default link.rel prefetch headers, which are perfectly doing those kind of things. So speculation rules is all about speeding up navigations. It's not about speeding up individual resources.
Okay, okay, then that clears my confusion.
That's also the reason why speculation rules does not work for single page apps, because a single page app does its internal kind of navigation. You're actually not really navigating, and so if you hover over a link, yeah, it basically it doesn't, it would not work.
Yeah. I have two questions came to my mind, which is more like, uh, from your experience with Akamai and customers, how are you seeing people adopting the speculation rules? And then the second one was about the script tag. You showed the example from the previous slide, which you define the speculation rules on the script tab, but I think you can also define put link to a JSON document. So
Yep.
I'm curious the various ways you can have this.
Yep. Let me answer the a great
First one.
question. Let me answer the second one first.
Okay.
So there are two ways you can add speculation rules to a page. One is by inlining the JSON file. The second option is by adding an HTTP response header called speculation-rules, which points to a JSON file, which can be, in this case, it's called speculation rules.json, could have also be called ABC, whatever. So the impact is actually, the result is actually the same thing. The browser will, when it thinks it's time, read that file and decide what they should pre-render or prefetch and when and under which conditions. So that's your option one. From a I would say from a performance perspective, there is no difference if you do it A or B. That brings us to how you can implement it. And this is for Akamai specifically, but I guess the same can be true said for other CDNs. So there are, in the end, two options to do it at the edge. Um, you can use an edge worker, which is a little bit of JavaScript running at the edge. Using the HTML rewriter, we could modify the HTML we get from, which is, for example, in cache, and inject a JSON snippet. That's perfectly possible. The alternative is, it's this we can do since 1999. You can add an additional HTTP response header at the edge, which points to a JSON file, and that JSON file then either sits at the edge or at your own origin. You can specify those. So that's super easy. I will not share it, but there is a link on Akamai Tech Docs which shares how you can do this. Now that's on Akamai. In theory, you can also you already have certain. There are other options you have if you want to implement this. Your CMS might support it out of the box. For example, WordPress, it's just a checkbox, and I saw that Drupal also is working on it. So it's there just from in the UI. You say, hey, enable speculation rules, and behind the scenes, it will do some magic. You can also add an inline JSON snippet at the origin. I think every developer will be able to add a JSON snippet with these simple rules at their origin. There are also some instructions. You can also do it via Google Tag Manager, for example. That's also an option. Or you can also add the HTTP response header pointing to a JSON file. And I think it's crucial. Let me go to the next slide. I think this is crucial. From a performance perspective, there is no difference how you do it. So pick whatever is the easiest for you. For example, so when I talk to my speculation rules about my customers and they say, hey, it's difficult to run some experiments at the origin. We just want to play around with it. Then I say, hey, go for the Akamai Edge because it makes things easier for you to override certain things. Another customer might as well say, hey, for me, it's actually easier to just enable this, to add this at the origin in my code base. It's also perfectly fine. There is no difference. As long as you have control over that JSON, you can get all the benefits you want and you have 100% control. Do you want to eagerly prefetch, moderately pre-render certain links, you basically, it's a powerful API. I would say embrace it, and how you do it, pick whatever is the easiest for you.
Yeah. And speaking of the 100% control, um, I think for Akamai options with the edge worker or response, you have to define this the CDN. It's not guessed for you by Akamai, but I think Cloudflare has, I think it's called forgotten the name, but why they help you generate speculation rules.
So this is my view, because I discussed this in length when I was at Google I/O with some of the Google folks. My view is this API is so simple to implement. As a developer, you know your application the
Mm,
best,
yeah.
and adding a CSS selector match, with, for example, with eagerness moderate, if you do that once, typically it stays the same for the next 2 years, 3 years. So it's a very generic setting. I'm not a fan of the automated ones because that brings us to the next thing: is what is the risk if you get it wrong? For example, if you would pre-render a logout page and you're like logged in and you would eagerly pre-render the logout page, people are logged in and before they know it, they are logged out. You need to know what the impact is on your application. For example, if you pre-render and that pre-rendered page runs certain analytics, those analytics might change the business behavior. You might, for example, if you go to an e-commerce website and you hover over, you go to the fifth article, you hover over 5 of them, all of them are pre-rendered. Then you look at the product page, the first product detail page, and then it tells you, oh, recently products you looked at. While you as a user never looked at those products, they might be because you did that too early, or were not aware of what was happening. So my view, all the automated things, and other people will disagree with me. So that I think that's perfectly fine. But my opinion is all automated things will either increase the risk, or in order to reduce the risk, you will need to, for example, just do a prefetch, or you will just do a prefetch on cached content on the CDN. But that's actually the content which is anyway fast. So if you do a prefetch of a cached HTML page, you win maybe 30, 40 milliseconds, unless you have a slow CDN, which I hope nobody has. So I think the API is basically too powerful to come up with a generic prefetch on hover kinds of things. And if you want to do that, you can still do that on Akamai, but then it's up to you to, for example, say here all articles start um, and done.
Yeah. Did they say what was their reasoning or use case for wanting to do this automatically? Because I'm guessing maybe they have a reason.
Uh, I, I guess ease of use, which in the end would
Yeah.
make sense. But other than that, I'm not aware
Yeah.
of that.
I mean, for me, ease of use, then you already could do something as simple as what you showed.
Yes,
Be-
so that's my ease of use is which developer cannot add this line of JSON in their HTML.
yeah.
I hope everybody can. If you can't do it, you can do it via GTM. If you can't do it, you can do it via header. So there are so many different other easy paths which go beyond checking a box and which give you more control and in the end more benefits from it. That's my view.
Yeah. I think they even enabled this because I have a few domains on Cloudflare, and I was trying to play around with speculation with a small demo. I think they enabled that by default, and I don't remember if I turned it up because I also at the end they sent the speculation header. I think they put it in the header, but I also just added my own speculation rules tag to see how this really worked. But if they enabled by default and you didn't know, then you just keep, let's say maybe they put a moderate or an eager loading for some pages, and then you keep getting wondering why you're having a lot of traffic to your CDN, and maybe also get charged for it.
Yes, yes. Um, this brings me maybe to because so far we only talked about the nice things of the speculation rules API.
Okay.
There are also a few risks which I think might be interesting for the listeners to hear about. Um, let me actually do a little demo of it. So here you see this is my website. So I run the largest scale modeling website in the world, and as you can see, I make some money by adding banner advertising. And let me for example click here. You basically see I have like 46 milliseconds 54 milliseconds. Let me hover over this one, even all the ads, etc. So this is speculation rules in action. So what do? I prefetch on hover, and I pre-render the moment the user clicks down. And so if you see here, it's like instant. And although all these items are in cache, and if I hover a little bit longer, so right now I have the HTML, and then when I click and the mouse goes down, in the background is pre-render is basically your page opens in a new tab, which is not visible. All the magic happens there, and then the moment you actually click, Chrome shows you the new page. Now, this is all fine and well, because what it does, it downloads the HTML, it interprets the CSS, it runs the JavaScript, it downloads the images, takes into account all these things. Now, what happened when I initially activated speculation rules? At some point in time, I thought I was rich. I said to my wife, "Hey, I can stop working because we are rich. I enabled speculation rules, and my advertising revenue goes up, and the amount of page views I have also goes up." But then I looked at the number; it was actually a 3x amount that it went up. I said, like, that's actually not realistic. Now, what's happening? If I hovered over a page, the moment the user hovered over a page, over a link, hover over a link, hover over a link, what happened in the background? I triggered 3 pre-renders. So the HTML was downloaded, the images were downloaded, all cool, but the JavaScript was also executed. And what does my JavaScript do? It says, hey, I have here a page about an aircraft, and I want to, I have here 3 ad slots. It calculated the ad slots. It went to the ad server. The ad server returned images as soon as possible, banners as soon as possible, and triggered logging of those things. So the result was many additional, and not only performance gains, but actually my banner analytics was completely messed up because I triggered those things in the background. And that's really crucial before you start with pre-rendering, is make sure that your JavaScript code, client-side JavaScript code, analytics, or anything which runs client-side, knows what to do. There are on the Chrome, on web.dev, it's explained how to do it, but you can basically, it's an easy to use API, so you can basically say, hey, this JavaScript should run immediately. For example, it's needed for rendering, while I delay the JavaScript for running the ads until the user actually clicked. So, and this is what's happening now. So I can now more aggressively pre-render. Everything happens behind the scenes except logging the analytics, and that's crucial. Why you can't just enable pre-rendering for everything, even though you like performance, is it can really mess up your analytics. And after a few hours, back then I disabled pre-rendering on hover, and then I made some JavaScript changes to make it aware. But that's the risky thing you should be aware of. But other than that, it's like super nice, right? Here is this is not 90 milliseconds. That was not that good. 1 milliseconds, 36 milliseconds, and it really feels instant, which I of course like.
The part for delaying the JavaScript that's not needed until render, is that part of the speculation rules or some tricks you do in your JavaScript file?
No, that's part of the web dev speculation. Let's have a look. I don't know it by heart, and my JavaScript is minified, so web dev speculation rules. So there is here. So this is, by the way, Word. So pre-render pages by Barry Pollard. This was his talk on speculation rules API at Google I/O in San Francisco in May, where he shares also some of the data from ScaleMates. I was very happy about that. There is a lot of details, which is great. When it works, when it doesn't work. But here at the bottom, you see how you can detect speculation rules API support. And you can Um, there was another one: detect and disable pre-rendering. No, that's not it. Yeah, here. Um, Here you can, for example, this is to validate was a page pre-rendered, yes or no. That's one thing. And here you have some code. It's dedicated section on the analytics. You can basically add this little function. And I just did copy paste this code snippet in my code. I didn't do anything special, just
Okay.
the stuff here. So rather than doing the analytics instantly, you basically await until it's activated. And when is it activated? It's activated when it's either still pre-rendering. Sorry, it's basically only this is only triggered then when the user actually clicks, rather than so when the page is activated, rather than on navigation start when it's triggered by the speculation rules. So that's crucial, and that's basically what I did. I added here and there a few of those additional promises. I basically await for the promise to resolve, and then that was basically it. So not in the end, nothing special, just copy paste.
Mm. Yeah, okay. That's I think that's a good trick to keep in mind for me too when I try to use this.
Yes,
Otherwise, you just have all the false positive analytic data being sent off. And you mentioned also regarding what you just mentioned. I think you've also seen the Next Faster website from Next.js, which they try to do a clone of MC Mastercard
yep,
website, and I think I checked it a bit, and he has a lot of requests going off just moving your mouse all over the page, and
yeah,
what you
that's
mentioned
crazy.
brings to mind.
Yeah, that I so let's say first is I like that they focus on performance, which is a good thing. Uh, what I don't like as much is that they're using, in my view, some unrealistic techniques, which in the end they're also do. In the end, they're also doing some kind of speculate, let's say pre-rendering, pre-fetching. But in my view, they're just doing it way too aggressive. I did a check. If you go to the homepage and you just scroll down to the top of the bottom of the page, you are like at 8,000. You can have like easily 8,000 fetch requests, which is
Ooh,
mind-boggling. The moment you start hovering over certain things, that's also true. Uh, but I think the main problem, all in the end, you could say, hey, all this is still reasonable, but I think it only works because they have like so small images. All their images are like 48 pixels, and even with 48 pixels, you end up with multiple megabytes of data. So conceptually, the moment you add bigger thumbnails, and I'm not saying huge thumbnails, just normal thumbnails, that whole concept, in my view, would just break because it's way too aggressive and not for realistic. I don't think for realistic use cases. While the speculation rules API, for example, what is some of the nice things is this is asking the browser, hey, if all the things are fine, can you please pre-render? Can you please do prefetching? For example, the browser, when it knows that your user is on has a low battery, then speculation rules will actually not kick in. Why? Because if you do all the things in the background, you consume more battery, and that's not what you want. If people have data saver mode enabled, then you also don't want to pre-render. Now, these are all little nuances you don't need to worry about with the speculation rules because the browser
that's
will do that for you.
yeah. When I saw the demo, it brought to mind my experience when I lived in Nigeria. With because unlike what I pay in Germany, where I have unlimited bandwidth and it's not capped. In Nigeria, I pay for maybe 5 gig or per month or per week or something. So I have little data and I have to be very conservative. So if I would browse a website like that, then I would, without knowing, it would have used up all my data
Yes.
availability. And also, it's also a region where there's no stable electricity. So you also have use up, if you are on a low end Motorola or Android phone that they don't have long lasting battery life or battery consumption, that could also trigger more of those. And then to those kind of users, it's very it's very damaging for for them. But maybe if you are in Europe or in the US and you don't worry about those, then it's a perfect website for you. You don't have to worry.
Yeah, but all the points you said, fully agree with that. But I think Matt Hobbs last year at Performance Now shared some data around people living in the UK. Not everybody lives in the big cities like London. Certain regions you really have a
Yeah,
very low. It's not that everybody in Europe has a good connection and everybody in Europe has a fast device.
true.
So it's still applicable for Europe as well. But I think the problem I see with the the faster website is just, even with these very small images, it's already crazy. And so they say, hey, we have the fastest website in the world, which, by the way, I don't agree. It is fast, but yeah, they're doing that. The concept they built, in my view, just breaks the moment you add thumbnails which are 4 times bigger. And 4 times bigger is not even a big thumbnail. That's still like a small one. But a realistic thumbnail 10 times bigger would be, yeah, that whole concept just breaks.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're almost on time, and I think we start wrapping up. Do you have? Oh, I have one final question, which was about the script tag for the speculation. Can I have multiple, say maybe at the top of the page, in the middle of the page, to, let's say maybe I fetch something with JavaScript and I changed the DOM, but I want to add a new speculation rule for that particular
Yeah,
interaction.
that's perfectly possible. Yes.
Okay. And the final bits to add before we wrap up from you.
No, I would say, hey, it's really a super nice API which really impacts the performance when people navigate on your website. Not the first page view, that's not true, but all the rest. And I think, yeah, I think it's one of the best things which has come to us in a few years, because it's such a powerful API and it gives such nice results. And the only downside is right now it's not available yet in Firefox and Safari. So I hope that changes. Soon. The good news is you don't have to worry. You can just add it, and they just ignore it. So you don't need to worry about breaking things on the other browsers either.
Yeah. And I think when you combine this with the early hints, which you talked about earlier, and probably with a couple of other tricks, then we can go back to having multi-page apps that are fast and instant, which I think is one of the selling point of most of these JavaScript frameworks today.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the options you have, so speculation rules, like you mentioned, is it improves the performance of page view 2, 3, 4, etc. Speculation rules is actually the complete opposite. That's typically it will improve the performance of your first page views in a session. So they're really complementary, and that's also why I implemented both of them.
Yeah. So in terms of resource, so I think people can learn more about it from the speculation, from the MDN docs which you had in the slide, and also the web dev page by Barry you mentioned.
Yes,
um, I think you haven't written anything about it yet.
I do. I do. So on the so on, I wrote together with somebody else. We wrote the documentation on Akamai Tech Docs. So that's how to implement it on Akamai. and I have written a blog post on how I implemented speculation rules on one of the Akamai blogs as well. So that's and then during the Wheel of Speed talk in Nantes, which was in September, great conference in France. There I spoke about a few crazy things I did to make scalemates faster. And there I also discuss speculation rules, and that video is available on YouTube as well.
Do you have links to any of those?
Uh,
Probably I will just drop it in the
let's have a quick look.
yeah. Because
So
the ones I know was I think Harry Roberts recently wrote something that I have on my reading list, which was related to speculation rules.
this is the beyond the basics, pushing the limits of web performance. That is the YouTube video of my Wheel of Speed talk, and then there is Akamai speculation rules. There is this blog post on linode.com, the cloud provider of Akamai, where I explain faster page loads with the speculation rules API, and I discuss a few. I share some additional data which might be handy. So that one, I'll share the link, and then you have Akamai tech docs. How to implement, if you want to implement it on Akamai, super easy. Oh yeah, this is the edit page, I think. Yeah, sorry, this is the um,
What's that tool you use for your web vitals measurement?
so Akamai text doc speculation rules. So now the link I had was the edit link. So this is the link for Akamai tech docs. So I'll share those links. Can I share them in the chat? I don't think so. So here,
Yeah,
this is Akamai tech docs. This is the blog post, how I did it on Scalemates. This is the YouTube video of my talk. It's not only about speculation rules, a few other things. And this is I would say, the recommended documentation to get started, written by Barry and his colleagues.
yeah. Maybe you can drop them on LinkedIn and I could put them in the comments.
I will do that.
Yeah. And what's I think it's an extension you use to show the metrics for the web vitals and all.
Oh yeah, that's the. So let me go back to sharing my screen.
I think
So
it's easier without having to open the web
yeah,
dev
so
tools.
this one of the this is one of the Chrome extensions, and if you click on the if you click here on the metrics, so you can either each time click on it, or if you click here on this little gear icon, you can add this display HUD overlay, and then each time you visit the page, you get this little thing. But I'm sorry to the author of this plugin. This is the Web Vitals plugin. I don't even know who wrote it. I just use it. Sorry for that.
Is it the one from Google which I think they are moving to the performance panel?
It's possible that this is the one from Google. I know that there are a few other nice ones, and I always mix them. I always mix them up. But yeah, this is, I think, potentially the Google one. Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay, we have one question from the audience, and then
Mhm.
we can wrap it up. Says, do you think that the speculation rules API is more dedicated to desktop at the current stage? Are there limitations related to pointing devices we cannot hover the element?
Yeah, so that's valid. I think a valid question. You will see the biggest impact on desktop. That's that's correct. Um, right now, yeah, on mobile you only have the touch down benefit, but that still gives you a nice head start. So it's not that speculation rules doesn't help you um, at all. And I think if you that you click faster, then you actually go down with your finger, so that you have there a little bit more time. And I don't know the latest status, but I do think that they are looking and investigating to do something smarter, differently at on mobile devices, where, for example, when a link is within the viewport or certain, let's say, a longer time within the viewport, while let's say while you're scrolling, that at that point in time, um, it might, depending on your eagerness level, do the action you want. So
Okay.
again, and not all links, but the ones, for example, which are in the viewport on that small screen, that could potentially indeed help.
I see. Awesome. I hope that clarifies it. Thanks a lot for your time, team. Was wonderful chatting with you again and getting deep into speculation rules. And uh, wish you a nice evening. And hopefully, I can catch you in one of the conference next year. I don't go to a lot this year. Got busy, but
You
hopefully
should.
we get to meet. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, folks. See you next week for my final episode for the year, which will be about AI and side hustle. And have fun. Have a great evening. Thank you, team. See you next time.